Hi, sorry, this is going to be part two of two. So you should have watched the other video first. And I tried to pause it and then I thought it was still recording to finish and it never recorded the second part of it. So obviously we're still figuring out how to do this. So I'm recording again the second part of the analysis over Chunkless, and then there's one more vignette. So we're going to do the rest of Chunkless and the notes for it that are on the screen in front of you and hips in this second video. And so we're back on page 46 to 48. And in the last video, if you watched it in order, I read Chunkless, but we hadn't talked about it yet. So back to page 46. Again, a couple things about this is the vignette where Esperanza is simply plot-wise. She's going to a First Communion, which is a Catholic Church ritual that for a cousin at the Precious Blood Church. And so she is getting a new dress and she's very excited about that. And then she attends and dances with her uncle. So that's pretty much the plot. Now, a couple of things happen at the beginning. To start with, her mother buys her a new dress, which seems to be a rare occasion, but she forgets to buy the matching shoes. So there's this whole symbolism at the beginning of the story, again, about shoes. So she has to wear her old brown loafers that are her school shoes because apparently with her family's income, she doesn't have very many styles to choose from. So it mentions, for example, on page 47 that she has to wear the old saddle shoes I wear to school, the brown and white, the kind I get every September, with my feet scuffed and round, my heels all crooked that look dumb with this dress. So I just sit. So again, the shoes are described as school shoes with rounded toes. And they often symbolize something, as the shoes did in the family of Little Feet. When those were high heels and they put them on and they were transformed, all of a sudden they were strutting down the avenue, which was dangerous, feeling beautiful, and then got a lot of attention, which put them into the adult world that they were not ready for. In this story, we sort of have the antithesis of that. We have the opposite, which is that the shoes are the child world. They are round-toed. They are like loafers that lace up that only kids would wear to school, not adults. And so she doesn't think they match and they make her feel embarrassed. So again, we're going to have this transformation that's going to occur in the vignette. And in this time, it occurs with music. Now, we had another vignette where music was also really important. So you might need to think back right now if you can on your own answer that. Like, when was the vignette or what happened where we had music that transformed Esperanza in some way? Now, if you remember, that was the music box. And it was back with Gil's music box bought and sold. And at the end of that chapter, on page 20, she said, he started up the music box and all sorts of things started happening. It was like all of a sudden he let go a million moths all over the dusty furniture and swan neck shadows and in our bones. It was like drops of water, or like marimbas, only with a funny little pluck sound to it, as if you were running your fingers across the teeth of a metal comb. And I don't know why, but I have to turn around and pretend I don't care about the box so Ninny won't see how stupid I am. So that previously in class, we analyzed that the music was like freedom and beauty, and she didn't have very much of it on Mango Street. And so when she heard that music, it like caused something in her emotionally to come up and to feel like, that she was happy and that she had beauty. And she wasn't even sure how to process those emotions because they were so rare for her in her life. Now, in this chapter, we also have music as a transformative thing. In this case, the music is through the dancing. And so she gets there and they're dancing in the reception after the communion. And her uncle Nacho, just a minor character, invites her to dance with him. But at first she doesn't want to. And she describes her feet as being large and heavy like plungers, which is what you use to plunge a toilet, which is kind of a gross image. But again, just showing that they were disgusting to her. Now, through dancing, she forgets her shame, and he convinces her to get out on the dance floor. And much like when the girls put on the shoes in the family of Little Feet, she begins to feel beautiful, just like they said we're Cinderella, and they put the shoes on and begin to feel that idea of beauty. So again, she puts the shoes on and she says, bottom of page 47, everybody was watching and everyone said, wow, who are those two who dance like in the movies? And I forget I'm wearing only ordinary shoes, brown and white, the kind my mother buys for school each year. So she begins to feel beauty through music. And the second thing that's important in this vignette, as I move the notes up for you, is that we see a transformation from the child world to the adult world. So the shoes represent the child world because they're round-toed school shoes that are scuffed that she wears to school every day. But when she's dancing, she also starts to notice a boy. And it's the first time in the book that Esperanza on her own, without the influence of Marin, has actually noticed something that maybe is more of a teenage topic. So when she was with Marin, she said things like Marin taught her how if you had flecks on your fingernails, it meant the number of boys that were talking about you. And she reported it, but it was some other ideas somebody else had been telling her, and it didn't seem like she'd come up with it on her own. Now we see Esperanza for the first time with no other older teenager influencing her. She just notices a boy is watching her dance and she likes it. And so it ends the vignette. And usually at the end of the vignettes, you can tell by the style. Sandra Cisneros typically has the most important things as the final lines in most of the chapters. And so the final line is, all night the boy who is a man watches me dance. He watched me dance. And so you can tell her attitude is supposed to be sort of like excitement, awe, that it's unusual, that she's being noticed by a boy. She seems to like that she's being noticed by a boy. We never know who he is and we never see him again. But the point is she's starting to move from the child world of the round-toed shoe and then dance and become happy and then start looking for the adult world, which again, in this case would be maybe romance or a flirtation. So again, when she starts becoming interested in the opposite gender, it shows that she's starting to progress out of the child's world. And that was the most important part that was in this chapter. The last chapter we're going to do today is Hips, which is on page 49, and it goes on for several pages, and it's one of my favorite vignettes. And I need to explain a little bit about the setup of it so you'll understand what's going on. You're going to have your four girls again, Rachel, Lucy, Esperanza, and Ninny, and they are going to be outside and they're jump roping. And it's not going to say very much about what the rules are, so you're just going to have to be able to kind of infer the game. It mentions on the first page on 49, Rachel says turning the jump rope a little quicker, and that's about all it says. So they are actually doing what's called double Dutch jump roping, and that's where you have two people on each side, each hold in both their hands two jump ropes. And so you spin one, then you spin the other, and the other person's on the other end, and you get a pace like this, and there's two ropes swinging alternately, and then someone jumps in the middle. So that's what they're doing, and they're setting up this rhythm, and they're making up rhymes so that people can run into the jump ropes as they're spinning both ways and then try not to get tangled and see if they can get through the rhyme before they get out. So it's a playground game. And again, the italicized portion as we read are going to be the rhymes that the girls say while they're actually jumping. And the rest of it is mainly Esperanza's narration. So we'll talk about what the symbolism is and be looking for maybe some things that you think the jump roping could mean besides just literal jump roping, because it is a metaphor for something else. All right, so follow along. We're on page 49 to 52. This one was a little longer. Hips. I like coffee. I like tea. I like the boys and the boys like me. Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, no, maybe so. One day you wake up and they are there, ready and waiting like a new Buick with the keys in the ignition, ready to take you where? They're good for holding a baby when you're cooking, Rachel says, turning the jump rope a little quicker. She has no imagination. You need them to dance, says Lucy. Well, if you don't get them, you turn into a man, Nanny says, and she believes this. She's this way because of her age. That's right, I add, before Lucy or Rachel can make fun of her. She is stupid, all right, but she is my sister. Most important, hips are scientific, I say, repeating what Alicia already told me. It's the bones that let you know which skeleton was a man's when it was a man and which is a woman's. They bloom like roses, I continue, because it's obvious that I'm the only one who can speak with any authority. I have science on my side. The bones just open one day, just like that. One day you might decide to have kids, and then where are you going to put them? Gotta have bones. Gotta have room. Bones gotta give. But don't have too many or your behind will spread. That's how it is, says Rachel, whose mama is as wide as a boat, and we all laugh. What I'm saying here is, who's ready? You've got to be able to know what to do with hips when you get them, I say, making up as I go. You got to know how to walk with hips. Practice, like if half of you wanted to go one way and the other half the other. That's to lullaby it, Ninny says. That's to rock the baby asleep inside you. And then she begins singing seashells, copper bells, Evie over. I'm about to tell her that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but the more I think about it, you got to get the rhythm. And Lucy begins to dance. She has the idea, although she's having trouble keeping her end of the double Dutch steady. It's got to be just so, I say, not too fast, not too slow, not too fast, not too slow. We slow the double circles down to a certain speed so Rachel, who has just jumped in, can practice shaking it. I want to shake like hoochie coochie, Lucy says. She's crazy. I want to move like heebie-jeebie, I say, picking up on the cue. I want to be Tahiti or meringue or electricity or Temblique. Yes, Temblique, that's a good one. And then it's Rachel who starts. Skip, skip, snake in your hips, wiggle around and break your lip. Lucy waits a minute before her turn. She's thinking, and she begins. The waitress with the big fat hips who pays the rent with taxi tips says nobody in town will kiss her on the lips because she looks like Christopher Columbus. Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, no, maybe so. She misses on maybe so. I take a little while before my turn, take a breath, and dive in. Some are skinny like chicken lips, some are baggy like soggy band-aids after you get out of the bathtub, but I don't care what kind I get, just as long as I get hips. Everybody's getting into it now except Nenny, who is still humming, not a girl, not a boy, just a little baby. She's like that. When the two arcs open wide like jaws, Nenny jumps in across from me, the rope tick-ticking the little gold earrings our mama gave us for her first Holy Communion bouncing. She is the color of a bar of naphtha laundry soap. She is like that little brown piece at the end of the wash, that hard little bone, my sister. Her mouth opens and she begins. My mother and your mother are washing clothes. My mother punched your mother right in the nose. What color blood came out? Not that old song, I say. You got to use your own song. Make it up, you know? But she doesn't get it, or won't. It's hard to say which. The rope turning, turning, turning. Engine number 9 running down Chicago line. If the train runs off the track, do you want your money back? Do you want your money back? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, no, maybe so. I can tell Lucy and Rachel are disgusted, but they don't say anything because she's my sister. Yes, no, maybe so. Yes, no, maybe so. Ninny, I say, but she doesn't hear me. She's too many light years away. She's in a world we don't belong to anymore. Ninny, going. Y-E-S spells yes, and out you go. Okay, that vignette has a lot of symbolism and double meaning in it. So we already talked about, if you look at the notes below, and you may want to be like copying some of this down like you would on like this. Maybe imagine that the computer screen is the board where I put notes that I normally handwrite, and then you copy them the way you want them on Post-it notes or into your own book. So again, when two people swing the ropes and you have to jump in, it is symbolizing that they're supposed to be like jumping into the like another world, because the song that they make up or the little rhyme is supposed to be about hips, which would be maybe about developing or growing up. So again, the title indicates that we're talking about like development and about the adult world. Now, Esperanza at the beginning even shows her academic side again. If you should be able to make a connection maybe to when the previous vignette that we had, our good, no, it wasn't that one. The previous vignette about the Eskimo words for snow, that was back on And Some More on page 36. She knew about all the Eskimo words for snow and the cumulus and the nimbus clouds. And we talked about how that showed she was a different kind of student than many of the kids in the neighborhood. Here in this chapter, she also shows her intellect by being able to talk about the scientific nature of skeletons and the bone design. And Alicia had told her that hips let you know which skeleton was a man or a woman's if you find a body. And so, of course, if you remember Alicia from Alicia Who Sees Mice, she's really our only positive female role model for education. And she's the one that's going to college despite all the demands of her father to do all the gender roles of taking care of the home because their mom died. So Alicia is mentioned again in passing. So we know she and Esperanza are still talking, even though she's not in a chapter right now. So as we go on, again, when they jump in to the game, the italicized portions are what they made up. The rules seem to be that number 1, they had to make up their own rhyme that was unique. And number 2, it had to be about hips. So the 3 older girls jump in first. And that's where, again, Rachel's is like skip, skip, stake in your hips. And then Lucy's talking about the waitress with the big fat hips. And Esperanza jumps in and says, some are skinny like chicken lips. And then it's Nenny's turn. Now, what's most symbolic in this chapter is that Nenny's rhymes don't fit. And you might not know why. So when she jumps in, her first rhyme on the bottom of page, or actually on page, they're both on page 52, is my mother and your mother are washing clothes. My mother punched your mother right in the nose. And the reaction is not that old song, I say. So the problem with Nenny's rhyme is that number 1, it was not original. When Esperanza corrects her by saying, not that old song, it indicates that it was a common playground rhyme that lots of kids had used for years. I've even remember it from growing up. It wasn't an original one. And secondly, that whole thing was about punching and washing clothes and never mentioned hips. So it didn't meet the criteria. So then she starts again and she tries to come up with a different one. And her second one isn't really any better. It's engine number 9 running down Chicago line. It also is not original and not about hips. So Nenny's done this twice. So the most important thing is that Nenny can't make up the rhyme because she's symbolically still a child and she's in the child's world. So she literally can't, as far as the symbolism goes, become a part of the adult world by talking about hips because she's not there yet. So she doesn't have an understanding of it like they do. So Esperanza says this in a quote at the very end. It says, Nenny, but she doesn't hear me. She's too many light years away. She's in a world we don't belong to anymore. that world that they don't belong to anymore is the child world, the world of only imagination and games, the world when they dressed up like Cinderella and put the shoes on in the other vignette and it was just dress up and play. But then they went down the avenue and it became unwanted attention. And now even just playing the simple childish game of jump rope becomes talking about growing up and developing. So everything they're doing now is starting to transfer a little bit into the adult world because of their age and just because of their interests changing. And Nenny doesn't get it because she's young and she's showing the opposite. So the other line that's really important is the not too fast, not too slow. And it has two meanings. That was back on page 50 at the bottom. And Esperanza was using that literally to instruct them about how to swing the jump rope so that they had an even speed and they didn't go too fast. So not too fast, not too slow, not too fast, not too slow. But it's also a metaphor because it's more than about jump roping. So if we've said that this is all about moving into the adult world and Nenny can't do the right rhyme and she can't jump into the jump rope game the right way because she's not in the adult world, then the way they're swinging the ropes is also indicating how you progress in the adult world. So if you move in too fast or too slow into the game, which is also real life adult world, there are going to be problems. So think back to other characters. Marin's a good example. She would have been someone jumping into the adult world too fast. And the warning would be not too fast because otherwise you end up over your head. You end up maybe in dangerous situations like the girls when they put the shoes on and ended up having bum man kind of proposition them. And then they ran away and took the shoes off and they weren't ready for that. So if you go into the adult world too quickly, you often might think it'd be fun and glamorous, but often you're not ready for the consequences or even the danger and you're a little naive to handle it. The other thing is it's also not a good thing to go into the adult world too slowly. So not too fast, but not too slow, not too fast, but not too slow. Now, we haven't had a character like this yet, but we will. And even if you just think in real life, your parents probably don't want you living in their house when you're 40. They're probably thinking, Nathaniel, Connor, go get a job. You can't just stay on our couch forever playing Xbox. So if you're 35 and 40 and you're not being a productive citizen and you're not, having your own family, you're not paying your own bills and you don't have a full-time job and you're paying for your own insurance, your parents will probably not be very thrilled with that because you're moving into the adult world too slowly and you're not taking on regular independence. We will have a character later who is named Ruthie and she'll have her own vignette. And she's a character that represents not too slow because she is an adult still living with her mother and unable to make even basic decisions for herself. So that's what the author Cisneros is basically telling us, that neither of those extremes are good when you're growing up. You don't want to be too quick, too fast to jump into the adult world. You don't want to be too slow to jump into the adult world. And you have to find that balance in the middle that you can go into the adult world at some point because we all have to, but that needs to be when you're ready to handle the challenges, the dangers, and the joys of it and not getting over your head. And then also not be too irresponsible. So not too fast, not too slow, not too fast, not too slow. Okay, so that's the end of our discussion for today. I'll have these notes also in Google Classroom for you if you couldn't see all of them on the screen. And then there's an assignment you need to look at that's in Google Classroom right below this. That is a digital assignment that you need to submit today and work on it right after you listen to these videos. And I will see you tomorrow.